will you say some of what did you went through?
Yeah, I mean, so I was on antidepressants for 17 years, with some like variations, but I I tried to come off of them multiple different times, and one of the times was with help of um, medical professionals, and it was like really kind of going down my medication, and then eventually coming off of it and having lots of weird symptoms that that I mean, some of them are classic, and you might not, most people might not even think about this, but coming off of antidepressants, one of the things is I get these things called brain zaps, and they're common enough that other people talk about them. But it's like you'll just be walking around and suddenly you'll just you'll just kind of it's like don't even know how to describe it. It's like it's a little bit like if you've ever been electrocuted, like if you've ever gotten electric shock and then suddenly you're disoriented. So it's like that weird sleep stuff. For me, the weirdest thing was my wrists and my ankles got swollen. They just started swelling up and aching, and I couldn't sleep, and I had no idea. And I'd really taken my time with coming off antidepressants, but I had no idea could this be connected or not. And basically, the day after I went back on antidepressants, it was all gone. So there was just all these weird just purely at the physiological level stuff, not to mention the many emotional things. And when I started doing research um, about this, the first thing most people will say is like, "This is your illness coming back. This is your mental health stuff coming back." But it's well documented, at least from people who've gone through it, that it's actually withdrawal, that that the whatever dependency people form on antidepressants, coming off of them has these um, massive withdrawal symptoms that can look a lot like what they went on the pill to begin with for in the beginning to begin with. And so it's like you can have suicidal ideation, you can have real weird emotional stuff that we work with emotions and feelings and possibility management, and people call these things they're imbalances really, but it's like they're called phantom emotions, which is like they're just this wild wacky feeling that just rushes through you for a little while and then it's gone, but it's a symptom. It has nothing to do with reality. It's like just something. It's like if you don't eat for a long time, and you start feeling feelings about that, angry, and then you eat and then the feelings are gone. It's not that you're numbing the feelings, it's actually they're the result of an imbalance in the body. Same thing with coming off medication. And for me, they lasted for a while. I mean, I went really slowly with coming off of antidepressants, and so it's like I get a little bit. It's like I go down with my antidepressant a little bit and then stabilize for a month or maybe 2 months, and then go down a little bit more. I did that for 2 years, so it was like a really slow, gradual process. And then coming off, when I came off entirely, um, I think there were the symptoms I experienced were lower, like they were fewer, but they were still there. There was still like um, these phantom emotions or things along those lines. And I feel like I'm kind of skipping around a lot, but during those 2 years of coming down, that's when I was doing the most. Let me see. Up to that point, I had done, I think, 5 or 6 years of feelings work, of doing initiations and learning how to feel, learning how to let my heart speak, going through emotional healing processes. And then during those 2 years as well. And so a lot of what I was going through, it's like I was going through it with in a community with the accompaniment of people who know how to hold space, and letting people know too, I'm coming off of antidepressants. So the people who were closest to me, they were really able to be with me
Mm-hmm.
while that was happening. Yeah.
The withdrawing part makes people believe that they are getting bad worse because they get the same symptoms of the illness. It's like I need to keep drinking it. I need to keep taking it because I'm going backwards. And what you discover that actually this is the symptoms of the withdrawing, and that there it what I hear is that it needs a container, and it's a long process that might be different for each person to go through that stopping the medication.
Yes. Yeah, a long process. It's worth it, I think, to do it this way. Because when I went off before, I just had to come back on antidepressants. The symptoms were so awful. And and that's the only way it worked for me was it's like, okay, if I want to take this seriously and I have the emotional support and team and journey, the people around me, then it's worth it not to do something that would compromise that, like just suddenly stopping medication.
Mhm.
I just want to say one more thing that I think most psychiatrists, no one ever talked to me about withdrawal. So of the professionals I saw, and you won't find a lot of information about it that's as good as that website, Surviving Antidepressants, because there's, as far as I know, no real medical literature on withdrawal. So it's the
Wow.
same, it's the same thing with, you have a psychiatrist, they know what they know from reading what they've read and being taught what they've been taught. Um, and and so people will take the pill, they'll feel a certain way, they'll start to come off, they'll experience withdrawal. The psychiatrist will say, this is just your illness coming back. And then the moment they take the pill again, well, the withdrawal's over, but then it also looks like, see, this, you need this pill. And so I just want to say that's also baked into this, is that the psychiatrists who are well-meaning, and I'm sure I'm sure there are psychiatrists who know quite a bit about withdrawal who've actually studied it. They would have mostly studied it just with the patients they work with. There aren't real clinical studies. But so I think psychiatrists are handicapped in a pretty big way in terms of being effective guides for supporting people coming off of medication.
Wow. I'm sad and scared letting it this in, because it's I I know so many people that really trust blindly in it, in medication. And then what I've experienced so far for myself is either I completely against. So I already met people that said, why you don't stop the medication automatically? And then there is this desire to stop completely. That was happened with my client, that he just started discovering the hell of the pharmaceutical industry, and it became unbearable for him to keep putting his money and energy and keep buying this thing and taking it every day. And so he stopped automatically. Or the another one, that is the blindness of trust blindly the pharmaceutical system and psychiatrists or doctors, and giving your life to it. This was the two
Yeah,
spectrums
right.
that I had in some months ago. So I'm hearing that there's another way to navigate that is closer to reality, this circumstance, from what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by closer to reality?
By closer to reality, I mean not denying the symptoms or where you are, like your X on the map, that your physical body is dependent on that chemicals, basically. So to not deny that, and that there is time and process to go through, and also not being blind. So you finding other ways to build inner structure, I would say, or build foundation where you would step and you would stand on your feet.
Hmm. Yes.
And I wonder how, if you would speak more about this part of the feelings work and this transition of how you, what was your reference point or your motivation to go through that?
Yeah. I so I went on antidepressants when I was 18 years old. So, and it's amazing you have this 18, what's next, uh, game world that you're creating. So, part of, I guess, what was next for me at 18 was going on medication. And when I look back, I had some emotional stuff going on. I was becoming a just becoming an alcoholic, just discovering I'm an addict basically around this time. So there's a lot of different things going on for me. When I look back, I don't remember a crisis at that time. So I can't remember anything where it's like this really awful thing happened and then it was just so clear that I go on antidepressants. And I'm giving you a little backstory because I think this is important, but I remember the psychiatrist I was seeing was like great. He was super compassionate. He was really able to talk to me and be with me. He was someone I trusted a lot. Uh, and and so there was a lot where I appreciated his presence in my life as someone as a professional. And I think it was within even our first three sessions. So this is like 2.5 hours of spending time with me that he recommended antidepressants. And and so when I think back, it's like this is something I ended up being on for 17 years. And I have big questions about how it affected my brain, how these drugs affect people's brains. So I think it's standard practice. I even experienced this more a few years ago for psychiatrists to quickly move to medication as the solution to whatever clients or patients are experiencing without exploring many or every alternative option. At least that's the case in the United States. And so that's where I started. And from the moment I started, I knew I don't want to be on medication. The first time he brought it up, I was saying I don't want to be medicated. I don't like that idea. And and so that never went away. The During the 17 years or whatever I was on medication, it never went away that I didn't want to be medicated. And and for me, there were just it never really became a priority until later. But it was always in the back of my mind of, okay, at some point I want to get off of these. I don't know what they're doing to me. I'm going through all of my 20s, like important developmental years as a human being. Also physiologically, the brain stops developing in the mid around the mid 20s. So there was like I was just like, I wonder what's going on with me being on these antidepressants. Other thing is I didn't notice them making a big difference. All I remember is I got on antidepressants. It was really intense. Getting on antidepressants, it's an intense experience. You can have like suicidal ideation, you can it's almost all the same symptoms of withdrawal you can experience going on them. And I did. I would not sleep for days. Took a while. And then I stabilized on antidepressants and I never noticed a real big difference in my life. So I just want to say that. I don't know how many other people experience that, but so I stayed on them because I really trusted the medical professionals. I trusted therapists. They were saying, stay on your antidepressants. Maybe, maybe make them, you're feeling really badly lately, maybe make them up the dosage. Um, and so I think after I graduated college that I started speaking with my general practitioner and psychiatrist to come off medication because I was like, how does this work? And so we go down, we taper, we'd hit like these maybe on that point when I go down more than half the dose I was on, it's when I'd start to experience initial symptoms of um, what I now think were just phantom emotions, were whatever. And instead of, so there's no space in the places I was going to explore that stuff. It was just, well, this is what happens. You just need to be medicated. If you make your medication higher, these emotions you're feeling will go away. And in some cases it was kind of accurate, but I think I was just experiencing withdrawal symptoms actually. I don't think they were real emotions. And so learning, I know you asked this question way back about like feelings work, learning to feel. One of the things was I never really thought at some point about being on medication. It just became a part of my life that I didn't think about. And I wasn't really sure if it was doing anything or not. And from time to time, I'd see a professional and we'd try to go down and eventually we'd go back up. And in the meantime, I was exploring transformational work, just starting to discover transformational work. I'd been to a lot of therapists that I don't know, I liked having someone listen to me, but it wasn't, eventually I'd stop seeing them because whatever, it just seemed like something else I was doing with my life. It wasn't so transformational. It wasn't so healing. It was just I could take it or leave it. And the first time I felt something was I was hanging out with these people. I started going to these different groups in Seattle that were kind of alternative. And someone said, we do this thing every week at our community house. It's a process space. You might like it. Why don't you come sometime? And so I went. I went to this process space, and the first time I went, it was a bunch of non-professionals. So immediately, whatever parts of me were still giving my center away to credentials were like, oh my God, these are non-professionals. I walk in and they're holding this circle and people are standing up in the middle of the circle and feeling stuff like feeling big anger, feeling sadness. And the facilitators are they're non-professionals, but they're working with these people in ways I've never ever seen. I've never ever seen this. And it took about 3 or 4 times of me going. So this is like a month of me going before the facilitator kind of looked over at me. By the way, this is a free space. There's money for this. And the facilitator looks over at me. He's like, you keep coming. Do you think it might be time? And so eventually I got up and he did this wild work with me where he had me, you know, I won't get into the details of specifically what he had me do, but he guided me to a point where I was sobbing. I was just standing there crying, sobbing, and I had not cried in something like 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And this blew me away. It was like, oh my God. And I'd just say, you know, that shook something in me. It shook something loose, both emotionally. So for the next month, I remember this month because it was like one of the most precious months of my life. But it was like I was thawing out. I was continuing to go to this space, and every day I was crying. And most of the time, I had no words for it. I'd just be walking to my job, and suddenly there'd be tears coming down my face, or I'd see like a little dog, and I'd suddenly be moved, and just I'd cry. So at that level, it started to open that up into this group and started healing stuff that I had no idea. I thought it was like, oh, my parents divorced. No, that's happened a million years ago. This other thing that happened when I was a kid, this breakup that happened, the times when something wasn't okay with me and I couldn't say anything, like all this stuff started flooding back. And I go to this group and go through the healing. It was like no therapy I'd ever experienced. It was wild. It was open. It was none of this. It wasn't the you have 50 minutes with your therapist and then it's over and you go back into life. It was like I was with these people for 90 minutes in a process space, and then we hung out for hours, like talking and being together and loving each other. And I was just like, this is something else. And so, that was my entry into the world of real transformational and healing work. And I totally don't want to dismiss like therapy or any of that world. I think it's different, and it's not what I was actually longing for.
Mm-hmm.
I was really longing for what I ended up finding. And after doing that for a bunch of years and being in the possibility management game world, where it's like there's a lot of that, and it's spreading even more. And now there are rage clubs and fear clubs. And um at some point people were just starting to ask me, especially my partner at the time, like, you take these antidepressants, uh, what about trying to come off of them? What about seeing what happens? And and that's when I had remembered some of the really bad experiences I had. And I also got, she doesn't understand. She kind of can't understand, like, it really does get bad to come off these medications. You can look crazy. Like, it's not just that you can look crazy, it's hard. I don't know if you've ever gotten addicted to something and had to quit, but I was addicted to cigarettes for a long time, and quitting that, it's hard. It's almost impossible to describe to someone. That's just hard stuff. So I so I well, that's when I started to look into what kind of at a deeper level, what have people done. So I was on a pill called Zoloft. So it's what have people done to really come off of this safely? And that's when I stumbled on these forums like Surviving Antidepressants, um, where I got most of my information about coming off. And it's also when I read the book by Robert Whitaker, which, yeah, I don't know. I think that book's worth reading. I'll just say it because we're in an interview. It's what is it called? Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker, and it just, for me, part of the journey was, I grew up with a mother who was a nurse who's medicated for depression, a brother who's medicated for depression, a father he was an ER doctor. So I grew up with a lot of, in a way, blind trust, what you call blind trust for allopathic medicine. And and this book made me aware of how many assumptions I had about a person who's been through medical school, about having a prescription pad and someone can write you a prescription, about if people are receiving pills, if they're being prescribed pills, that someone has tested these pills really thoroughly in a way that's unbiased. And we are certain that about what these pills do and that they're helpful. It's like those were all just assumptions that I had. And reading this book destroyed that for me. It destroyed, um, I think the book at its most kind of um, intense suggests that in a way, medication is a way for psychiatrists. This is a really extreme claim, but that it's a way that psychiatry justifies itself as a profession. And I think that's pretty extreme, but at a subtler level, when he's going through all the different, really the whole history of medication in psychiatry, it's like over and over again there's been a pill. It's the same story over and over again. A pill emerges, it's for something. Maybe they use it for something else. So originally it was this pill called Thorazine, which I forget what it was originally for, but then they started giving it to schizophrenics and they noticed, oh wow, the schizophrenics they're not babbling so much. They're not so crazy. They're not looping around. They're kind of sedated. And then years later, we find out that this pill is actually doing they give it to all these schizophrenics, and it's actually doing a great deal of harm. So this is almost every medication or class of medications that he goes through. It's exactly the same story where a pill has been rushed forward, offered forward as the solution, and then later we find out, oh man, we didn't really know what it was doing, but it turns out these people now have holes in their brains, or it turns out that these people can never ever come off of the medication. It's not helping them, but if they get off, it will really be bad. So this is, I think it's valuable to know, and for me, it put a kind of fear in me about. I was afraid I would never be able to come off after reading the book. I wasn't sure what would happen, and I think part of I'm so glad, I'm glad that I was on them for more than half my life, antidepressants. And I think I would have kept taking them if I did not have tools of being able to feel, or if I did not have people around where it's like I could just go through a holding while I was having this freak out stuff happen in me. Really start to get like that. I think I always suspected this, and this is why I was looking for other transformational work. But I got that most people go to therapy, and if someone says, I'm going to therapy in modern culture, the question people around them would think is, I wonder what's wrong. And the idea would be that there's something wrong. If you're feeling something, there's something wrong. So you go to a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist to go back to normal. And normal is, when I look at what normal is being able to function, basically, being able to function. And to me, it's being able to function in a world that is insane. So it's um I'm just thinking about my own experiences, but it was when I would go back to see a psychiatrist or a therapist or something, it was because something went wrong in my life and I was starting to feel stuff. And then I wanted, and that was interfering with my ability to do my schoolwork, or when I had a corporate job, my work. And so that was the main thing. It's interfering with my ability to do these things. And and so that's the goal, is get back to functioning. And what I think I intuited and what I discovered when I first went to these crazy people's houses, like, one, everybody's got tons of stuff. Everybody feels, everybody has an emotion. And even if you're numb, like, you can start to feel again. Like I
Mhm.
did. I didn't feel for 6 years. I didn't cry for 6 years. I'm crying. Someone's holding space for me and I'm crying. So that's one thing. And then the other is that they treated these emotions and feelings, and I do too in the work I do, and you do too, and possibility management, as doorways to evolution, not as a signal something's wrong and I've got to get back to normal, but it's like something's going on. This is the doorway to healing, or to me discovering more about myself, or to me, maybe these things that are making it impossible for me to function, these feelings that I can't do my job anymore, maybe there's something there. Maybe it's because my job is not my job. My job is something completely different in the world. It's and so when I think about the model where it's I'm not functioning, I go back to functioning, I see it as an interruption of a process. And it's the best we know about, but I think this process can yield so much. It has for me. My life is not what it was when I discovered.
You mean go back to normal is interrupting this flow of what would become you, like the next door that you would grow into.
Right, yes, exactly.
This goes in the direction of also the question that I asked about what was your compass or reference point to go through the process. Because what I've noticed is that this software of two phases healing that you're just speaking about, of there's something wrong with me, so I go take something so I can go back to my life and go back to do the things that I think I have to do. It's it's like a fixing software. So what I'm
Mhm.
experiencing working with people that are taking antidepressive and it's learning to feel is that even the learning to feel is from the reference point of fixing myself. So
Mm.
I'm learning to feel so I can feel better. And then I was exploring that with one of them, and the bottom line of meme that we got was feel better is not feeling pain.
Mm.
So it in the bottom line was that feelings is bad and that I would doing feelings work, so it will arrive one day if I do 5 years, 6 years, 10 years of feelings work, I will get to the point that I will not feel pain, that I will feel good.
Right. Yes.
And then I was like, "Well, yes, but what is that really? What is that really that you really want to feel? What is that fulfillment or that feeling good behind the software that you're seeking?" And then the person starts describing, and the image that I got was being alive, was was finding her job and her passion and start unfolding that in the world, like having a something that is not fixed, but that is she's alive, and then she started connecting with that. And what where I'm going with it is when I hear you speaking is how important might be in the journey to, and I think it's a process of shifting that relationship to pain and to path and to evolution. Like, from
Mm.
which place or reference point do you relate with evolution or with life itself? And when it's the perspective of fixing, even I think feelings work can become this craving or seeking the next thing to do.
Yeah. I definitely went through that to some degree as well of the fixing or that there's a place to get to somehow where that I finally won't be. I mean, it's actually exactly what you just said. That I won't be in pain anymore. Yeah.
What was your longing? That I will not have pain anymore. And I can get part of it when I hear people speaking. It's fucking a hell on earth. All of the symptoms that you are describing, I cannot imagine, like it might be a hell to have all the symptoms and not know how what to do. So I can understand that people say I don't want to suffer.
Yes.
But even then, I don't want to feel pain. Or what is that you really long or were longing?
Well, well with the coming off antidepressants, I can tell you one of the big longings for me was it had been so long. It had been whatever 17 years and I was like, what am I missing? I really wanted to know because it's like they must be doing something. They can't be doing absolutely nothing. So there's something happening. And I wanted to get a sense of who I was without something in between me and reality. And so that was a big part of it. And I discovered stuff. I mean, I one of the biggest things was I mean, one's not very interesting probably to most people, but to me it was I had been someone who could just sleep a lot. Like sometimes I could sleep 12 hours longer even every single night. And and it was a part of my personality or something in a way of everybody sort of knew who I was around. They're like, wow, Devin's just a tired guy. So I thought that for 17 years. And it turns out that it was the medication. It turns out that that I was it was like it turns out that I sleep like 7 or 8 hours a night, and that's normal for me. So that was huge. And then the other thing is, I think this is part of that actually, but that I have so much more sensitivity than I used to have. Like in my energetic body, emotional body of my fear, it's significant. And it I think when I was on medication, it was just so dull for so many years. So that was a big part for me, was discovering that longing.
So you started connecting with your sensitivity and like being touched. You said about the dog that you see and it
Yeah.
touch you, or like maybe trees or a river, or being touched with things you were not touched before. And I I wonder, well, how do you navigate that? How you navigated that, especially in the beginning? And my question comes from the assumption and from the sentences I received from men. I cannot bear be with that sensitivity and being in the world like it is. Being in a city and go outside and have so much noise, or go with my friends and they are drinking beers and they are speaking about this woman and these things, and I would just not bear to be there. So I don't want to be as sensitive as this. This is some of what I hear when men go for the first time in Rage Club, for example. Say, I feel great, I feel so alive, and I don't want to keep in that sensitivity because
Yeah.
it's impossible. I get to be numb, even that I know the results or the consequences of being numb. So I'm getting like, how did you navigate that, or it was like that for you?
Well, yeah, one thing you just said, even though I know the results and consequences of being numb, I would still rather be that. Is what someone then experience the intensity. And I think the reality is that men, maybe people who would say something like that, don't really know the consequences. That even if they kind of have an idea about the consequences, I mean, here's what's on the line: is aliveness, is really being alive. And and I think there's a price to pay for being alive, which is that you feel, and you don't just feel one thing. And there's an old map of feelings about, joy is the only good thing to feel. And and I think that's part of what would be missing in the shift, is like the shift from there's only one good thing to feel to really all of this is aliveness. And we have had absolutely no training. In fact, the opposite. We've had no training about how to be with the aliveness of the world and of our own hearts. And we've had lots of training about how to numb that. And so, I was really fortunate in that it was like so many coincidences, but these people that I was just telling you about, the community they lived in, first of all, they lived in a community. So it's a place I could go for hours, have dinner, bring food, get to know people. It was like a whole friend group that suddenly opened up to me. And the other fortunate thing was that they were about a 15-minute walk from my house where I was living at the time. Just totally coincidental. And so that worked for me. And I led a double life. I just led a double life for a lot of, I don't know, a bunch of years where this was the most interesting thing happening in my life. It's even a lot of the friend group that I had left Seattle at that around that time. We had all just graduated. So it's like I didn't have friends anymore there. So I just with these became my people. And um and so I think there was something really to that, in terms of I could go up there and just be with people while I was freaking out, while I was crying. I could see them crying. I could feel anger. It's like all this stuff. It it wasn't like I went to a rage club and then that was the only place in my life. 2 hours a week or 2.5 hours a week where I could feel. Um, and so, okay, on the one hand, I say I'm lucky, but I think for me, the real message is it is a lot to bear to start to learn how to feel. 99.99% of people will not understand. If your friends didn't go to Rage Club, they won't understand. And so to keep an eye out, I think become available in a way to, if you really want to do this thing and learn how to feel and bear the sensitivity, it happens in a village.
This lens in me that takes a village to people learn to feel and to because it takes time. It's a learning process that, as all learning process, that it can't be rushed through. And it's such a what is the word in English? Paradox with the standard culture. So this also raised in me a question as a Rage Club space holder, and during the Rage Club space holder training as apprentice, of this question that I have when I hold a Rage Club, for example, and it's a facet of the context that I've not held or even pay attention before, and that I want to experiment in the next space I'm holding, how to empower people to build village where they are,
Mm,
and and mm, and create that environment, because otherwise it's like a torture that do a 4 weeks Rage Club, 2 hours, and then you come back to your life and it's like you tasted the heaven, and then you come back to the hell, and there's no doorway to to go there. So how to curate a team, and I think this is part of building local things.
mhm.
Um, and I'm so glad that in PM also now it's becoming more accessible local teams or local rage clubs that like people live in the same physical space, or the same city at least. And there's still something missing, I think, of learning to build that for yourself, like asking to come for a dinner or asking to come over for a camping or something about that listening to it plants me. I want to explore more. I feel
I
joy.
love it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm with you. It's a really important question. I just am imagining people being able to go to Rage Club and then spend the rest of their week in whatever community or village that they have, continuing to be really held.
Yeah, and to make it real and sustainable. I think this is one of the
Yes.
distinctions that I most love, is that Rage Club is not a course or a class that you would come and learn like these tools and then a method. It is something that your shape change, and then when you shape change, and it takes this time to solidify how to make it sustainable. Will you give hints and possibilities of experiments or research for the people that are starting to consider withdraw, like the um leaving the medication, or that are on medication and it wants to do something else than only being the medication?
Yes. I mean, the main thing I have is to learn how to feel. If you haven't taken that step, and that would mean um, to feel consciously, like in spaces are held. So it would be to check out a rage club or a fear club, or to do a session with you, or do a session with me, or someone else who holds space for feelings. To check out Heart Gym and do this like whatever free space, 30 minutes at a time of just exploring, actually feeling. So so I think that's the very, 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 very first step. it's valuable. It's a very valuable first step. And then for people who can feel to I was impatient to come off antidepressants, and that had an effect on my journey at times. And to something like to first just take it really easy on yourself, like 2 years of your life to really safely coming off medication, to give it that kind of time. Your body needs healing. Your body needs to go through withdrawal. It's real. Take care, and to learn, make a plan. It's like make a real plan, have a team, all that stuff. Do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. It's really an act of like using love on your own journey to take care of yourself would be my recommendation.
Mm. And I want to add on to start developing a relationship of learning with life, of becoming a learner, and even in the way to relating with the medications or the feelings itself, like that when I relate as learner, even the things that it seems really tough, it's become like, wow, this is an experience and I'm going through it. And it's bringing me information and wisdom. And then this, I choose that, somehow I choose that, and it's part of my path. So I'm taking it. And being this yes, I think the position of learner, what I research is being this yes for what is, and
Mm.
letting it this feed you, so you're not broken. And a practical way, I think, to develop that way of relating, it's really to have friends or space holders that you can go and you can ask, like, just hold space for me to be a yes for it. And whatever it comes, you say, I'm a yes for it, and let it the feelings happens. And you say, I'm a yes for this also, and you let it the next wave happens. And to do that practice of say, I'm a yes for this,
Yeah.
that I'm practicing with people in the sadness club right now, it's such dropping the pressure of needing to go faster or changing something about. So this is another possibility I bring.
I love that.
Yeah, and have fun. I appreciate,
Right.
yes,
Fun.
I appreciate, Devin, your yeah, you putting words in your own journey and making it available for others. And the enjoyable time I could have with you, and connecting also as friends, and talking about this kind of stuff. So thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. I loved your questions and getting to speak about things that I don't get to speak about so often.
Right. I will add on the description the links that you mentioned, the book, the link for the can you say it again? I think you said it in the Rage Club.
Survivingantidepressants.org
Yes,
and
exactly.
Robert Whitaker, Anatomy of an Epidemic.
Yeah. And I also will at our website, so if you want to have make contact with Devin, you offer coaching sessions, trainings, you're Expand the Box trainer. So you
Yes.
search for him. And I'm also hold space for coaching sessions and online and in-person trainings such as Rage Club, and you make contact with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Goodbye.